having proper expectations and seeing that, like, for us, like, if we double our money, we are super excited. But as long as we make our money back, then that's a win for us.
Can each of you introduce yourselves and maybe say anything really you want about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jessica. I'm the funny one.
She is. We've been married pretty well for 6 years now.
Has it been 6 years?
Because she's the funny one. That's my story.
This is Joe. I'm Jessica. We are the family flips together. So a big part of why we do this is so that we can spend more time with our family, teaching them and leading them down their paths and everything. And this is a vehicle that we used to get there, but we fell in love with it, and it's just grown since then.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You said it all, so I don't think I need to say anything. You spoke on my behalf.
And we're done.
Interview over.
I did read that in your bio on YouTube that, this was sort of something you decided to do to, take more ownership over your family structure and freedom and all of that. But how did you decide on the resale business as opposed to, anything else, any other business you could have started?
I was married previously, and I had moved to Nashville, Tennessee, with my ex-wife so that she could become an audio engineer. And when we were there, she didn't work. So we went from 2 incomes to 1 income. And I'm like, this isn't gonna work. We need more money. So I just started selling stuff around my house. And then when I sold that, I started going to Goodwills and thrift stores. I bought a lot of women's jeans early on in my reselling
I know
career.
that sounds weird.
Because I could go, I could very quickly look at the hems and the butts to figure out, okay, these are good stylish jeans and these will sell. And then I started doing that. And then it was around that time I got promoted to, in the job I was working, I didn't need to do it anymore, but it sparked something in me to do that. I just loved my own business. And then whenever I got tired of working in the restaurant industry, I had some stuff left over that I had purchased when I was still, when I was started out reselling. And I just started selling cell phones. And then we started growing the business. This is before, I guess, we had been married for probably a year or two. We were selling a lot of cell phones, but we were wanting to grow the business. And we don't like to shop. Like, we don't like to go to department stores. I don't like to go thrifting. So
I don't have the patience.
No.
Great.
So I'm like, how can we buy a lot of inventory without actually having to leave our house? And that stumbled across the wonderful world of liquidation and buying pallets, truckloads, boxes, you name it. We have bought it. And here we are.
Since then, we've made a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
We've learned from those mistakes, and now we're here, and we've got our own warehouse shop, and it's grown great now.
Amazing. So tell me about some of those hiccups along the way.
Well, I think one of my favorite ones is the first pallet that we ever bought.
I forgot about that one.
So
you always bring that one up. I about it.
because
I'm like, out of my memory, you don't exist.
So I am by nature a cautious person, very risk averse. I like to know everything there is to know about something before I purchase it. Joe is like a jump first, ask questions later kind of person. And so he came across a pallet, and he was like, oh, look at all these household appliances. There's like air fryers and all this other stuff. And I was like, listen, no.
Pressure cookers. What were
pressure
those?
cookers.
Instapots.
Yeah.
And there's a pallet of had 8 or 9 Instapots on it.
And I was like, no, Joe, we're not going to do this. He's like, yeah, we are. So he buys it. And the pallet comes in. And one thing we did not know about was that pallets are listed by condition. And these pallets were super cheap. And we thought we were getting a great deal, but we didn't realize that there was such a thing as salvage condition.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we opened the pallet.
Doesn't sound
Great.
good.
There's like box boxes and there's like all this other stuff. It looks great. And we pull an Instapot out and the front panel just falls off. And Joe goes, oh.
Yeah, then we picked up another one and the bottom falls out. And then another one, it was all dented and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this sucks. But we kept doing it.
I don't know why we kept doing it.
We ended up giving like most of the pallet away. I'm like, I want this out of my sight. Let it be gone.
We had like 5 coffee pots, and I put all the good stuff together to make one good coffee pot. And then we had to like all the crap.
It was like a Franken coffee pot.
Oh, fun times. Yeah.
But the next set of pallets we bought, the first thing we unboxed was a 3D printer. Paid for one of the pallets that we got, and then
we did look at condition, so we knew kind of what to expect. We had learned, so we didn't continue to make those same mistakes.
I think probably the biggest mistake, in my opinion, was we had bought a truckload and it went well, and we went to buy another truckload, and we had like a 2,500 square foot warehouse where we were selling mostly online. And we bought a truckload of small box items. They call them smalls. Each pallet has like 500 to 1,000 items. And I was thinking that we would be able to sell pretty much all of it online. And we got the truckload, and I soon discovered after going through these pallets that 60 to 70% of those items were $10 items and under. And that there's no way to be able to sell them all online. So we had to like pivot our entire business just like that in order to move through this truckload, because it's like you have sales reps, you have people you talk to, but because I'm the type of person that I jump without assessing all of the stuff first. It gets us in trouble. Not so much now. It's like I've learned enough to where I'm like, let's talk through this. Okay, I found some stuff. I found some pallets. I found a program. I found these. Like, let's talk about it so that we can have some plans together and figure out, is this something that we want to do or not? Because I guess that's the thing about liquidation is you don't always know what you're going to get. So it's like the problem solving comes in when you get it and you're figuring out how you're going to sell it. So like having multiple ways that you are able to sell the product that you have, whether it be a small storefront while you're selling online, or a flea market booth, or maybe an auction house, or maybe other resellers in your area, just some ways, multiple ways to be able to sell the many different value items, the types of items that you might get in liquidation, because it's one of those things, it's a problem you got to solve.
So how did you solve that initial problem? You said you had to pivot pretty quickly. What did you do?
Yeah, so we had every intention of selling all this stuff online. Couldn't do that because we would make no profit. In fact, we'd be paying people to take it from us. So we ended up opening a bin store, essentially. We didn't know that bin stores were a thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't geared towards resellers. It was more geared towards like the bargain shopper. So we created these big boxes. We put everything in there, and we did kind of like a falling prices where on the first day, it's this price, and we had like a sticker system and all of that, and we ended up moving stuff very, very quickly. But then there comes new problems, which was we started this business to spend time with our family, but we did not have the means to hire employees to run it for us, so we had to, and that was taking up a lot of time with our family, and we had to make the very difficult decision to close it down. Because our kids were a lot younger at the time, and they really needed us more than we could give them, and they became a priority for us. Yeah. But if we had continued, and we had the means to continue, I think we could have kept that model for a while.
Yeah, we could have. It was like it rained every weekend for like 2 months. So we have this truckload that we thought we were going to sell online. We're going to have to sell it locally. We weren't in an ideal retail location. Like the warehouse that we got was
kind of
on the skirts of town, and it was cheap. So that because we're going to sell online, like we had no plan to sell locally. And then it rained on top of that. So people didn't want to travel out there. And then it's like, our why is that we do this so that we have the freedom. to be able to do. And you know, with retail, when you open up those things, like Jessica's saying, like if you do retail, like you're at the commands of the customers and when they shop, and they shop mostly nights and weekends, and we didn't want to do that. So, you know, we shut it down, we scaled back for a little while, and now like we are in the scaling back up to where we were before, which has its own unique challenges.
But with more wisdom.
Yes, a lot more wisdom and some strategy.
So do you have an avenue for those $10 type items, or have you figured out how to avoid buying pallets with those $10 items?
Well, when we first closed it down, we just packed it all up and put it in a storage unit. And it stayed there for a couple of years. And we did sell, there's a couple of people in town that do sell like bargain items. And so we would sell some things to those people to try to offload some of it, but it's a slow process.
Yeah.
So we still had a whole bunch of stuff in here. Now we just recently, we're actually in the process of, in this warehouse space right behind this camera, there's a small little retail area. And this is a really great place for people to shop. We're right across the street for some major big box stores. And so we do that. We have our Facebook Marketplace stuff out there, and we have our smaller items as well, to try to just move that stuff out. I don't imagine it being a huge part of our business because we still are largely e-commerce, and we avoid stuff that we know, like certain pallets from certain stores that we know are going to have smaller items on there. We do avoid them, but if we do get them, we now have a way to move them.
Yeah, and I know we opened up a flea market booth probably in January of last year. That was right before COVID, and to see if we can start selling some of those small items. And we started selling a lot of those items in the flea market booth, but then COVID hit and nobody was out shopping. So then we ended up having to box it all up, close down the flea market booth. And then it was like, at some point in time, we'll have this space. And now we're in the process of moving it. Now, I think in our own unique challenges, when we closed the warehouse down and we moved into the business, into the garage of our home, that we solved that problem because we couldn't buy the large items. But we created a strategic sourcing plan to be able to buy smaller items that had a certain dollar amount value, so that we can have 1,000, 2,000 items in the limited space that we had, but it had the value, the dollar amount that would still be able to have the sales volume that we needed to have to be able to pay all the bills and have extra.
Are those smaller high value items things like electronics?
Yes.
Lots of electronics we did. That was like our bread and butter, buying pallets of cell phones or cameras, headphones, any consumer electronic stuff, anything that fit the bill and it was in our budget, we bought it.
And how does YouTube, fit into your whole business model? You've got a successful channel. I'm sure that, perhaps you're monetized. How does that sort of work?
So YouTube was kind of just an experimental thing that we wanted to try. And really it started with phone farming, which is like we wanted a channel that would help people make money on the side. Because for a lot of us out there, an extra $300 a month could be life changing. And it's very hard to get that without getting a second job and doing a lot of your time. So finding ways for people to make money at home, in their spare time, I feel like is a thing that we wanted to give to people. So it started with a thing called phone farming, and that didn't pan out very well. So we had all these pallets, and we decided to just do some live videos of us unboxing these pallets.
They were horrible too.
They were terrible. Very poorly produced. They were just live videos. We just set up a camera on a phone that had a cracked screen.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that's how A&E's Extreme Unboxing ended up finding us, through these really poorly produced live streams. And then it started kind of growing. We kind of got that creative bug, and we were like, how do we do this? People are liking it. How do we do it but make it fun? because Joe and I, we like to have fun. We like to banter back and forth. He's my best friend. And we wanted to share that with the world. We wanted to share our family values with the world and everything like that. And eventually it became an unboxing channel. And we ended up doing a few vlogs, but then we opened another channel for that, which is very quickly growing as well. So we have now a channel that does unboxing, where we do a lot of education, and we kind of talk through, okay, how are we going to sell these items now that we have them off the pallet? And then we have another channel that kind of chronicles our business and how we go through this process and the problems that we come into, and how we solve those problems as a family.
Pretty amazing that you are, so out there and open and willing to share, your business model. I'm sure there, some people want to keep that information a little bit closer, so it's really great that you offer that for people as a learning resource.
Yeah, and we catch some flack from some people in the reselling community, especially when the extreme unboxing came out. There was a lot of people that were hating on us within the reselling community because they felt like, we were creating all this competition. And we look at it, we don't look at it from I don't know what the mindset is, a lack mindset, or we're stealing from people. We're looking at it as there are now all these people that now have the opportunity or the ability, the knowledge, a way that they can make a couple of extra $100 or however much they want, depending on how much time and money they have to invest. But there's so many more people now that can come and they can put extra food on the table. They can get that extra car that they wanted, so that maybe only one person worked in the family because they only had one vehicle, but they could use reselling as a way, buy a pallet here, buy a pallet there, as a way to get an extra vehicle, or maybe they needed a bigger house. So we look at it.
And here's really where it comes down to, right? In 2017, National Public Radio posted an article that talked about how in 2017 alone, 5 billion pounds of returned merchandise found its way into landfills because there's nowhere for it to go. So, big box companies, they cannot sell returned merchandise. If an item becomes overstocked because it's now obsolete, because a newer model is out, what are they going to do with that? Because it costs money to destroy it and it costs money to store it. So what are they going to do? They can go and they can make a little bit of money off of it, sell it to liquidators, and then now all of these families have an opportunity to do something about it. So we're reducing landfill stuff, and 5 billion pounds, there is room for everyone to eat.
And that was 4 years ago. That was before COVID, where online sales just boomed.
Right. The return rates have skyrocketed.
But it just,
now that it's all online,
it gives many more people the opportunity to make extra money. And I think, part of why we want to be on YouTube and be vulnerable with it is to show people that, one, like as a couple, if you work hard on communication, you work through all those issues, that this is something that you can do as a couple. It doesn't have to be full-time. It could be part-time. It could be a weekend thing that you can do as a couple, but you can also do as a family. Like, you can get your kids involved with it too, so that you don't have to, like, if you needed a part-time job, like I know, like growing up, like my mom and dad at both various points in my life, they had to go get part-time jobs, or they had another business in order to make extra money. And that was less time that I was able to see them. And I think so many people, as they get older, I've talked to countless, there's articles I've read that they always wish that, man, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. That I thought that all that extra stuff I was trying to buy was worth it, but I really, at the end of the day, like I wish I'd have spent more time with my kids. So we're showing people a way through our lives that you can do this with your kids on the weekends at night. Like, you can get them involved with taking pictures, with writing descriptions, with going to a liquidation place or online or wherever and buying some stuff and teaching them some real world skills in the process.
Yeah, and tell me, what is it like working as a family?
It is not sunshine and rainbows all the time.
No.
I will tell you that. You have to want to do it to be able to do that. And I've got kids from the ages of 3 to almost 9, so their skill level is going to be a little bit different. My 4-year-old loves to put stickers on our retail items. My older daughter is able to pull items for shipping, but these are all organizational skills. These are all things that we incorporate through homeschool. When we unpack a pallet, we have her add up all of the stuff to find out what our potential profit is going to be. So she's learning not only business skills, but basic math skills, things like that. And so we make it a point to incorporate it into like their homeschool activities. But also, if we need to get work done and they're not having it, that is a struggle that we have to deal with. And, I'm not saying that we have it all figured out. There's definitely some times where he and I have to figure out, okay, like maybe this is not the best day for this. You keep working and I'm going to have to cut away. And then I have to make up those hours elsewhere. But that's part of parenting. It doesn't matter if you're public schooling, private schooling, or whatever. Sometimes your kids just don't understand and they have needs that are different than what the business needs. And you have to learn to balance it. But yeah, it's definitely stressful, but for me, it is vastly more rewarding and worth the stress.
In terms of your purchasing decision-making process, what factors do you use to judge whether you're going to buy a particular pallet or truckload?
I think for us, it's all about the sourcing strategy. We talk about a lot on our YouTube channel, is you have to make purchases dependent upon, I don't want to overcomplicate this, so I'm probably, because I could talk for 30 minutes about this one thing and make it very complicated, but explain it very well. But I think it's too long for this. For us, when making purchases for pallets or truckloads, we look at items that we can sell well in our local market and also online. And like if we get a pallet of like outdoor stuff, that's summer stuff, we're probably not going to want to buy it during the winter time when it's not going to sell. Unless one, you have space to store it and it's a good deal. Like if you have the space, then I don't like how that's going. I'm going to restart it. It's something I'm very passionate about. Yeah. And I don't want to mess it up.
I knew he'd want to answer
it. You were right.
I don't know. Maybe you should answer it, just because I feel like I'm going to make it way too hard and it's going to confuse the beginner, because I don't know. It is, you can answer it on multiple beginner level, novice level, and all that.
That's a question with lots of facets. So
it is. Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, just give me a pallet. I want to buy what Joe and Jessica buys, but then not think about like maybe they don't have that much time. Like we're fine with buying 1,000 items that will profit us $5 per item because we have employees, we have space. But if you only want to work 5 hours a week, then you're obviously not going to buy it.
Why don't you answer it in the term of the time, space, money model?
I don't know how to explain that in a very short segment.
Let me try. So when we're trying to decide what we're going to buy, the main 3 things that we think about is how much time do we have, how much space do we have, and how much capital do we have. And there's a lot of different facets that can go into other than that, but that's the basic foundation is, I'm not going, if I don't have a lot of time, like if I'm a part-time, weekend seller, I'm not going to find something that's going to take me a long time to sell because I want that stuff gone very, very quickly. And I'm not going to find something that's going to take me a long time to list. I don't want anything super complicated. I want as many listings as I possibly can in the short span of time that I have. Now, something that takes a longer time to list, you might get bigger profits, but you got to have the time to do it. And then on top of that, like if I don't have a whole lot of space, I'm not going to be buying furniture pallets, right? So these are kinds of things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to source. On top of that, the capital I have, some of us don't have a whole lot of money to start off with. So anything that I can buy that is more guaranteed to give me some kind of profit, even if it's not high profit items, because the higher the potential for profit, the more risk you have. And some people don't have the luxury of buying a bad pallet or buying a bad something of liquidation. So I always recommend for somebody who is first starting out, who doesn't have a lot of money, is to spend a little bit more to make sure that you know that you're probably going to get your risk. Now, it's never going to be completely risk-free, but at least you know that you'll make a few dollars extra that you can reinvest back into that business, rather than buying something salvage and just losing it all.
Yeah, so if it's like an unexpected return pallet versus buying a pallet that maybe has shelf pulls. Obviously, the shelf pull pallet, it's going to cost you more money, but it's a lot less risk because it's assumed as a shelf pull, it's going to be all brand new stuff and maybe some box damaged items from, having to put on the shelf and then taken off, versus unexpected returns, which could be potentially a lot more money, but it's unexpected returns. Like, you have no idea what you're going to get until you unbox. Like, you can get a pallet of all great stuff, or it could be a pallet of complete junk that you're like, now I'm going to have to pay the garbage company to come pick up this extra trash.
And for those damaged and seemingly unsellable items, do you ever try to fix things, repair, refurbish, or what's your process for those items?
It depends on the item, really. For us, if we can fix it quickly, and it's worth the amount of money, like for example, if I don't know how to fix a $40 lamp, right? Then is it worth the time for me to go buy the stuff that I need? Do I even have the tools on hand, or am I going to have to buy or rent tools to fix it? And then on top of that, is it going to be worth the $40 when I could spend that hour that I spent trying to learn how to fix this $40 lamp and instead list items that'll net me $300? So it really kind of, now if it's a quick fix, like maybe a quick splash of paint or something that I already have on hand, absolutely I'm going to try to fix it. But at the very least, I'm going to try and part it out. And that's taking the good part. If something is broken, leaving the broken part out, taking as many parts as I can and selling them as replacement parts. At least I can recoup some money there. It's not as much as a fixed unit, but it really depends on how much time is it going to cost, and can I do more, make more profit doing something else, and really that determines whether or not I'm going to fix the item, part it out, or just trash it.
Yeah, I think this with that is for items that you are going to fix, that's awesome. But items that you can't, like, you can sell a lot of items for parts, especially electronic things. Maybe it's an item that you cannot repair. There's lots of crafty people that we have sold lots of things on eBay, Facebook Marketplace that need repairs. And there are people out there that are willing to do it. I know here in the community, we have people that we know, like, I can send them a message, say, hey, I've got these items, do you want them? And they'll come and get them and take them and do what they need to repair it. For at least that way, it's not going back into the trash, which is something that we're trying to prevent from going into the first place.
Right. So what would you say are some of the key factors that have contributed to your success along the way?
Well, there's a lot of lessons learned, but I would say one of the big ones was, I don't know, let me think about what big one is.
I would say, one, you have to look at reselling, and specifically buying liquidation, a lot like playing baseball, in that sometimes you get up to bat in baseball and you hit a home run. That may be a pallet that you quadruple or you make 10 times your money. Sometimes you might hit a double and you double your money, but sometimes you might strike out. But you got to think about it. It's a long game. That reselling, you have to look at it over the course of time, and not one pallet, not one truckload, or even 2 or 3 pallets, because it's every pallet, every truckload is completely different. You may make a ton of money off of one pallet, one truckload, but the very next one that you get, it may be a complete loss. But if you set the expectation off of, well, my first pallet was amazing, so I expect every other pallet to be amazing. After that, you're setting yourself up to fail. The same time, if the first time you try it and you get a bad pallet, and then you think every pallet that you buy is going to suck, and then you decide not to do it, well, then you're stealing from your future self by not continuing to try. So I think having proper expectations and seeing that, like, for us, like, if we double our money, we are super excited. But as long as we make our money back, then that's a win for us.
One of the things that I notice a lot in the reselling community is the I want to say this with I want to say, I feel like it needs to be said, so let me try and word this right. I think one of the biggest dangers in somebody starting a reselling business and either stunting their growth or failing altogether is leading with emotion rather than logic and business sense. There are a lot of people that I see that are not progressing in their reselling business, and it is a constant uphill struggle, and they're trying to hustle and they just don't understand why. And it's because of these little things that happen within the business that add up to a very big problem, which is that they value what they think their business is worth versus what the market values their business as. And that could be a lot of things. That could be in customer service. A lot of people, they talk about lowball offers. All you have to say is no thank you. Instead of going back and forth and start trying to do that, you're wasting time that you could be listing, you could be doing other things, and you're letting your emotions get the best of you. And then it starts to change your perspective of what selling looks like. And sometimes you just got to put that down and just say no thank you and move on to protect yourself and to protect your heart. Furthermore, a lot of people value what they're selling higher than the market values. It doesn't matter what an item is listed for if it doesn't sell. What matters is how much are people willing to buy it for. So if you've got an item that's been sitting on the shelf for a really long time and you're getting these offers that you think are not worth it, you have the choice to keep it that way because you really want to value your item that way. But if you really want your business to be successful, sometimes you have to sell it for what the market is willing to sell it for instead of waiting for the market to come to where it's at. And I know that might be different. Some people do resell things like antiques, and maybe they feel like people aren't valuing it the way that they want to value it. And that is ultimately your choice. But there has to be a positive cash flow. There has to be money going in and money coming out in order for your business to flow. Otherwise, you stagnate it. And one of the main things that stagnates a business is the business owner's emotions. And are they crippling you? And I think that every single one of us, including Joe and myself, allow our emotions to get in the way, and we have to reset.
Yeah, we're all human, but that's great advice. It's really good advice. And how do you kind of determine that initial selling price? Is it through market research? Is it just through experience at this point? You're pretty aware of what most things should sell for?
I think at this point, because we are buying a lot of similar items, we can look at an item and be like, yeah, the market is currently this much because we're getting these items in, but also we just shipped a whole bunch of items that morning that had similar price points. So we can kind of look at it and say, oh yeah, this is going to sell for $40. This is going to sell for $15, so on and so forth. But if we don't know, whatever platform that we're selling on or whatever platform it came from, we'll usually do like a comparison price. Okay, this is what it's selling for new. This is what it's listed for, and it's selling. We'll look at sold listings and say, oh yeah, this similar items or this item has sold this many times for this much. We can probably do that. Maybe we see items that are listed but nothing has sold. We'll say, okay, well, we'll price it a little bit under, so if people are looking for it, maybe they'll catch ours first because it's a couple dollars cheaper. So there's a lot of strategy in that, but ultimately we price it for what the market will buy it for.
Yeah. I think with eBay and even Amazon, like, it's pretty easy to determine what the market's paying for it, because you can look at, with eBay's what items are selling for. In Amazon, there's different software that you can look at to see the historical value. I think really the key is for a lot of people that do start, reselling, they're buying pallets. They do sell a lot on Facebook Marketplace or other local selling apps. That can be a little bit harder to determine what the market value is, because I find, and that's where we always tell people, you have to know your area by selling particular items. Like, there's certain items that, like furniture, baby items, household goods, that if it's brand new, we can get probably 80 to 90% of retail for those items, and they sell quick. Whereas some other items, we may only get like 50% of retail or 40% of retail, even if it's brand new. And that only comes through doing. There's no charts you can look at. There's no price comparisons anywhere. It's just you sell an item, and if you price an item, you'll know pretty quickly if you priced it too low, because you will get lots of people asking about that item. And on the other side, if you price it too high, you're going to be getting crickets. Nobody's going to be asking about it. So it's just lowering that price, and then over time, kind of collecting data. If you're a person that likes to keep charts, you know, write on your Excel spreadsheets, I got this, it was in this category, it sold for this much, this is how long it took to sell. I think it's important for beginning resellers to try and track the information and how long it's taking to sell items for, so that you can get an idea of what the market is.
That's a great point. So in terms of when you first began, about how long did it take to start really becoming profitable?
I'd say for reselling, for us, becoming profitable, it's been a journey throughout. I think every time that we garner growth, that I'll use this for example, that our first year of reselling as a couple, we did around $192,000 in revenue online, that we made a pretty good profit. The next year, we scaled up and we hired a couple of employees, and we did almost $300,000 in revenue, but we actually made less money that year than we did the previous year. You know, we didn't think about how adding on people. You just think, okay, well, if I'm one person making this much money and two people are making this much money, then if I hire 3 and 4, then we're just going to double or whatever that amount. And it's not that exact ratio. So it took some time and some process for us to figure out what's profitable and all that. But as a person that's just starting out, you know, if this is something that you're doing because you need the extra money, that a lot of the money that you make, you're going to want to reinvest in the business. That if you buy a pallet for $500 and say you make an additional $500 and now you have $1,000, right? That the initial investment of $500, I would make sure you keep reinvesting that into the business, so that you can keep a continuous flow. We see a lot of people that we talk to where they'll make that $1,000, but then they spend $800 of it for personal stuff, and now they only have $200, and now they can't reinvest into the business, and they're actually stealing the profitability of the business. So we always encourage people very on when you're starting out to reinvest as much as you can into the business until you're getting to that point of, like, maybe you're making $1,000 a week and you're wanting to keep an extra $300 or $400. Like, don't take any money out of the business until you get to that point and it's sustained over a period of time.
So how did you figure out, though, the sweet spot when it comes to number of employees or maybe job roles? You know, where are you at right now with your team?
We're at now, I mean, we just moved into this space like 6 weeks ago. And before that, it was just me and Jessica and one other employee. We have since hired 4 more employees to help out. They're not all full-time. There's, you know, I guess 3 part-time and 1 full-time employee amongst that team. So I don't even know how to find the sweet spot. Here I am again, like starting the answer. I think, no, I don't like that.
Well, I think the key. Let me.
I don't know. I got that when we were filming from Extreme Unboxing. You know, when you feel like you're going somewhere and you don't, like, you're not where you want to just stop talking. So that way you can just recenter it. That's the great thing about editing and filming, is that as long as you stop, you can just recreate and redo.
Exactly.
I think the sweet spot is found through trial and error. I think that growing slowly, deliberately, and organically is really the right. There's a gnat. Sorry.
It's getting you. It was getting me.
So I think the key to really finding your sweet spot when it comes to hiring employees to growth is to do it slowly and deliberately. Because if you go slowly, you can step back. But if you just throw a whole bunch of stuff in it and then you just try to make that work, it becomes a mess. And I think we learned that really when we started buying truckloads at our old warehouse. We bought truckloads, we hired employees, we did all of this very, very quickly. And anytime you transition, whether you're moving spaces, adding employees, you have to expect a level of productivity to go down. The more change, the more your productivity level goes down. And do you have what it takes? Do you have the resources you need to sustain you during this lower productivity time? And most people don't when they start hiring people. You got to get to a point where, because you won't be listing while you're training an employee to list, right? So, and then they're not going to be listing at the same level that you are until they have time to kind of earn. So like if you're hiring 6 or 7 people and you're trying to get all these people listing and you're not listing and they're not good at listing, your productivity level is going to be down. It's going to be down for a long time, and you still have to pay these people. You still have cost of doing business. So the key really is that you're not there's no way to really determine the sweet spot, but make sure you're in a place that is comfortable, you have a great padding, and then slowly add something and see how that affects your boat. And then if you start sinking, you can just take a little bit out and readjust, right? Because you don't want to throw a whole bunch of stuff in there not knowing if your boat's going to sink or float.
Yeah, absolutely. Also very well said. So how about the advice that, yes, good job. The advice, say, someone's trying to start in this business and they also want to make it a family affair. What particular advice would you give to that family, and that husband and wife, or wife and wife?
Expect there to be fights. No, that's not advice, but there's
real.
no fight.
Over communicate.
That's good advice.
Over communicate. I'll say that, because I think especially in any kind of relationship, there's generally somebody who is got a provider mindset and somebody who's got a nurturing mindset. And that's really how it works. I'm very much the nurturer. So my number one thing is to make sure my kids are okay, to make sure that the household is still good, make sure that we have dinner ready, we know what we're having for dinner. And a lot of my attention goes there. Whereas for Joe, he's making sure that we have sources, that we have inventory, that we have all of this stuff, that people are working enough. And it makes it for a great, great team. But sometimes when we have two different focuses, that my priorities and his priorities aren't lining up, and it's a compete for resources. So to be able to over communicate, hey, this is what's going on with me. Hey, this is what's going on with me. Okay, I see now that there's going to be a compete for resources, and he's not mad at me. He's just trying to get his lane taken care of. And so we have to figure out a way to make that work. So over communication is definitely key. And then the second thing that is just as important is to develop processes, especially when you have children involved, because children thrive in routine and processes. So make sure that they have expectations, so they're not just wandering around blind. Because any human, when they have no idea what's going on, you're gonna have kind of a stress level that kind of rises inside of you. And for kids, that usually manifests in things like fits and fights and sarcasm and talking back and all of those things, because they just feel completely out of control. So being able to have some kind of routines every night before my kids go to bed, one of us will say, tomorrow, here's what's going to happen. And we do our best to make sure that they know what's going to happen. And as soon as we see any deviations from that plan, we let them know, hey, there's a possibility that this might change. And it also helps us because it keeps us accountable for making sure that we do have a plan, so that my priorities and his priorities are going to line up and we can be a team rather than competing for resources.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add on would be having some clear roles and expectations between the couple, the spouses. Even if it's two individuals that aren't together, maybe it's two friends that want to do it together, is that you have clear roles and expectations about what each person is going to do. And then when you do, it's easier to hold each other accountable in a respectful way, that that way I'm not trying to do what Jessica's supposed to be doing and she's not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because then it could be that inner conflict, why Like, do they feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to, so they're doing this?
Or on the other hand, the ball drops and nobody picks it up because they think the other person's going to pick it up.
Right.
You know?
So just having those clear roles and expectations and making sure that's communicated to know that, you know, sometimes you can do the same. Like Jessica and I, there's times where we can both list together, but sometimes we can't. Like sometimes she may be doing meeting people to sell items, or talking to people on Facebook Marketplace, or I'm doing the listing. Like things change, but as long as you communicate, like Jessica says, it's a lot easier to navigate those relational waters, especially when you're adding a business on top of that, because it can make things a little tense.
It definitely puts pressure on any relationship.
Yeah, and I say a lot of people say don't do business with friends, don't have a business with family, and I don't think that's true. I think as long as you have two people who are willing to communicate with one another and discuss things as they arise, you can have very successful relationships while you have a very successful business, if you're willing to do the work of getting along and communicating with one another.
And admit that you're wrong.
Yeah.
I think both of us, we've had to really, I mean, just we just want to be really authentic, that there were a lot of times where, you know, I'd have my guns up and I'd be like, no, I'm right. He's going to apologize. And he'd do the same thing. And there's no way. And I'm very stubborn. He's very stubborn. Like, that's just not going to work, you know?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say, look, I take responsibility for this. I apologize. It was not my intention to hurt you. This is what happened. And then he can say, you know, I feel the same way. I apologize. This is what's going on. And it's very humbling. It is extremely humbling to be that, but it is your right to be right worth sacrificing your relationship, your business, and all of that. And for us, it's not. And I think that core value right there has made us successful as a couple who work together, live together, you know, shop together, raise kids together, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you can't really have passive and passive aggressive communication styles in relationships, period. But when you add business on top of that,
That's just a lot of extra
you got to
weight.
have people who are assertive in their communication, but they're doing it in a tender and respectful way, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure working together, it's not, in building this business, you don't have traditional hours, right? But do you have a lot of spare time? Do you have your weekends off? How do you, structure your free time and your play time?
I think early on we got into a lot of trouble because we had so much freedom. When we first got married, it was like, it's Monday afternoon, it's nice, let's go to the park. Not realizing that we still got to work. Like, we still got to list stuff to make money.
I have no problem going to the park at 3 p.m. on a Monday, as long as you are putting the work in at another time.
Yeah. And I think, for us, we have, right now we don't have as much free time as we used to, because we have added a layer on. We've added this commercial property to it, where we have staff, and we're going through those growing pains. But before that, we were probably working, 30 to 35 hours on average a piece per week. Right now it's more than that. But once we transition through the having all the stuff, like, we enjoy working. We just don't want to be a slave to the job. Like, we want the freedom to where, if it is Tuesday afternoon and we want to take the kids to the water park, that we have that ability, because we do have systems in place. But we also know that, I can just wake up early tomorrow morning, or I can work a little bit later this evening. But for us, we don't work nights. We try to take nights off unless we're editing a YouTube video and the kids are already in bed. We don't work a lot of weekends. We've worked more weekends recently, and that's
because of the transition. It's not the norm.
And we're working, like, we're selling a lot more orders, and we don't want to come in Monday morning and have to ship out 150 packages on a Monday. So we've been coming in Sunday to get half of the orders shipped.
And that doesn't take a whole lot of time either. That's like an hour. Like, we'll go visit family. The kids will have a great time. all engaged and everything. Then on the way home, they're already tired. We'll put on a movie in the corner, and they're perfectly happy to just chill there and relax because they've had such a long day, and we just pull orders real quick and then we head home. So it's not like, I wouldn't really consider that like we're putting in work. We're just setting us up for success the next day.
We gotta have the balance. I mean, we just went on vacation 2 weeks ago. We were gone for a week, but we put in the time with our team to where they were here. We weren't worried about work. Like, it was taken care of. Orders were getting shipped out. Listings were getting done. So we value that.
Yeah, it's all about the autonomy, right?
Yes.
Yep.
You guys are doing great work, and I really appreciate the time you spent to speak with me today. Is there anything I haven't asked that you want to share about your business or family or relationship?
I do have something that I want to share.
Yeah.
And it's something that took me a really long time to come to. And since I already know it, I'm going to share it with you because I think it's really important. I am a goal-oriented person. I like things to be fixed. I like processes. I like things to have a way. But much like Joe is very passionate in the inner workings of running a reselling business, I am very passionate about the processes that go into making a well-oiled machine, whether that be for your family life, whether that be for homeschooling or whatever it is that you do in your life. A lot of times we start something and we want it to go very, very well. But if you take the time and really sit back and look at it, you'll see that it's not like that at all. And I always say that processes are a lot like riding a bike. The goal is to ride a bike down the path in a straight line. But when you first start learning how to ride a bike, you kind of curve, you're overcorrecting, right? So like, for example, with us and our time management, right? There is a fine line between freedom and discipline, right? So if you go too far to the freedom, you're not making any money. If you go too far into discipline, you're not living your life, right? And there's going to be a point in time where you start to ride that line really, as long as you work at it and you figure it out, but you are going to have to expect overcorrection. You're like, okay, oh no, I'm not making any money. I'm not even working my business. I got to go back. And then you get really, really disciplined. And then you're working all the time and you're staying up until like 2:00 in the morning doing listings. And then you're coming back. And then eventually that path gets really like narrow. You start kind of going like this, but eventually you get to this point where there is a straight line, and that works in every case and in everything. So when you're developing processes, when you're starting this business, know that there's going to be challenges, and know that the first time that you fix it, it's not going to be perfect. And you just keep working at it, and you work back and forth, and eventually you get to this point where it's fine. And then the season changes, and then you have to adjust all over again. So you have to fall in love with the process, because you're never going to get to this place of arrival and success, and that it's just going to be perfect all the time, because the minute that you get it figured out, the season changes and you got to do it all over again. So,
yeah. And I would say, for me, it would be to don't compare yourself and your business to somebody else's. That whether you read somebody's blog, you watch somebody's YouTube channel, whatever it is, if you think, well, if I just buy the items that they buy, then I'll have a successful resale business, right? Or I'll make the amount of money. But you are operating under a completely different set of situations, circumstances, different geographic area, that what I buy and sell for me, other people aren't going to want to do, because it's not in the cards for them, for where they live, how much money they have, the time, the space, all those things. So that's the beauty of reselling, is that there are millions of different ways that you can be a successful reseller, as long as you are doing the reselling for you and you're not trying to imitate what somebody else is doing. So find the items that you like, find the items that you can sell in the ways that you want to sell items, and that's where you're going to find success for you. You will not find success in trying to imitate somebody else's business. It's all about what you're wanting to do, because then you're solid in your why, like, I'm doing this for these reasons. And as long as you focus on that, then you're going to be happy with it. But it's when you start getting off onto this either side with anything is when there will be struggles.
Yeah, makes sense. So we can't copy and paste the Joe and Jessica model.
No.
No. I mean, our model isn't even perfect. So
No.
for us.
No.
So.
And that's the downfall of, you know, social media is we tell people all the time, like, we fight. Like, everybody's always like, they watch your videos like, oh, we love the interaction between you two. And like on our live videos, we're like, you do realize, like, before we filmed, that was one of the biggest fights that we had in a while. Like, we were arguing.
Yeah,
and
we
like,
had to chill. Like I had to like leave the room and take a minute.
Wow.
We're married. We're around each other all the time. We're two completely different people. Fights happen. Arguments happen, you know?
And that's why, you know, comparison gets dangerous because we don't see, you know,
We show
what
you our
goes on.
highlights.
And so, yeah.
Well, you're also super open and honest, and we really appreciate that. So thanks again for the time.